Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Crashes and Taxes. I am your host for this podcast, Rebecca Walser. Super excited to be with all of you guys today. You know, I usually do podcasts where I'm giving you my opinion and I'm explaining things. And today I want to do something a little bit different. And this is going to be more of just a thinking show. What I want to do is just bring in probably 5 to 10 things that I think are very odd that are going on in this country. And we're just going to discuss them. And I'm not going to give you necessarily my opinion and what I think. I just want this show to be about thinking. Let's think through what's happening and let's try to figure out why it's happening. So I want to start off with the flights over this past weekend. So when you include Thursday, so that would be Thursday, June the 16th, through the weekend. So that would be through Father's Day, basically. And also you could even include that into Monday because it was a holiday weekend for our first national holiday celebration of the new Juneteenth holiday, celebrating the ending of slavery. So when you look at this was reported on Monday, so therefore it does not include Monday's flights. When you look at how many flights were canceled from Thursday through Sunday of this past weekend, we had 10,000 flights canceled. I myself flew on Thursday out of Reagan National in DC back to Tampa, and I had no problems with my American flight. It was smooth sailing. And in fact, I didn't even notice in the airport any flights getting canceled. But I saw multiple pictures from different sources over the weekend with nothing but cancel. And you're asking yourself, well, gosh, is this a jet fuel? Is this a jet fuel problem? Because, you know, there's diesel fuel problems that are happening right now in this country. We have truckers that are literally going up the East Coast. And as they're going up the East Coast, they're getting stranded along their route because they're out of diesel fuel along the route. So that's happening. Yesterday, not yesterday. What date was this? Okay, so this was on June 21st. So this would have been Tuesday, June 21st. You had 1,000 Southwest airline pilots protest. 1,000 Southwest airline pilots protested outside of Love Field, which is the Southwest Airport in Dallas, on Tuesday, June 21st. And they were protesting because they are stating that they are overworked and severely understaffed. So basically just very understaffed. Where are all the staff? And this is a situation that is not just unique to the airlines, although the airlines seem to be saying that there's a lot of people, they're just extremely understaffed, like our pilots just disappeared. I have my theories and I have my thoughts as to why, but again, this is a podcast that I want to do where I just want you to think about this. I want you to be critically analyzing all of this information that's coming out, because I think that what happens is the media sort of, drops it in chunks separated from each other, and nothing seems to be interrelated. And yet I believe a lot of these things are very much so interrelated. The airline industry gets about $50 billion or got about $50 billion of pandemic relief throughout the coronavirus pandemic. So you have to ask yourself, all right, that really probably sustained them through, and probably not even, their burn rate is so high when you're maintaining a fleet and you have all of the costs. But, a lot of the airlines were not operating anywhere near at the level of capacity. And I know that because I flew in multiple places in 2020. and saw, I mean, I literally took pictures in multiple airports where I was probably one of the only people in the entire wing of the airport. And then I took a picture where I was on a 737, and literally there was I think 7 of us on the entire plane, and I took a picture. So certainly the airlines did have a massive problem through the pandemic and needed help, and everyone understands that. But what's going on now that we have 1,000 pilots protesting outside of, and these are pilots that work for the actual airline that they're protesting, saying that they're severely understaffed after we just came through literally 10,000 flights getting canceled. So you might have heard about 3,000 or 3,500 flights getting canceled. That was just on Sunday alone, as I understand it. So you have to look over the 4-day period. It was a massive amount of flights that are getting canceled. So I want to switch gears now, and I want to talk about the food issues that we're having. I literally have a grandmother who works for me, but she's not that old. She's a young grandmother. And she just asked me this morning if I have any contacts in Canada, because they are down to their last 5 cans of formula. And she's literally worried that they will not be able to find formula and feed their new grandbaby any further, that the mom is literally freaking out. All of my kids are beyond the age of formula use, but I can't imagine being in that position where you cannot find food for your young children. This is where we are now. We know the Abbott labs that was shut down because of failing some safety inspection tests that were reopened recently, but then they just were reclosed 2 weeks ago because of flooding. So they are projecting that they were initially saying it was going to be another at least 6 weeks before they could even get product to market. But with this re-shutdown, now we have again more crises in the baby formula area. But I want to talk now, and there have been about 98 instances, and I have an article we could get to show you all of them. But what I want to talk about right now is this new information that's coming out this week about wheat crops in Kansas failing on a massive scale. Kansas is the wheat state. It produced in 2021 1/4 of all of the wheat of the United States. So it's 25% of our wheat bread basket in this country. And basically, we need them to come up again with a lot of wheat because of all the things that are going on between Russia and Ukraine. We know that the fertilizer costs with Russia is one of the largest fertilizer exporters in the world. And when they went into Ukraine and when a lot of their goods were banned, then we have a lot of fertilizer prices going through the roof. That's affecting all kinds of farmers across the country and across the world, actually. But wheat crops in Kansas are actually failing on a massive scale. By this time of the year, normally the wheat, and I'm reading from an article, the wheat growing in this part of Western Kansas should be thigh high and lush green. But as a months-long drought continues to parch the region, many fields tell a different story. There is nothing out there. It's dead. Farmer Vance Ecumi said, surveying a wheat field near his land in Lane County, it is just ankle-high straw. So we have the U.S. Department of Agriculture telling us that 41% of all the wheat in Kansas is in poor or in very poor condition. This is particularly dire in the western part of the state. Many fields of Western Canada now resemble barren wastelands. So we now see that our Kansas wheat crop is potentially failing overall, and it could not have come at a worse time. Wheat is soaring to crazy price levels. And again, somewhere around 10% of all the wheat fields in Kansas will not even grow enough crops to bother to harvest them. So in the West, in Colorado, the projections say nearly 1/3 of wheat fields won't produce enough to bother harvesting. In Texas, we have 3/4 of the crop that will be abandoned. So it's beyond Kansas. It goes into Colorado and Texas. 1/3 of the wheat fields in Colorado, 3/4 of the wheat fields in Texas. I mean, I don't understand what's going on. And what we're seeing now is a pattern of drought that resembles the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. The 1930s, when we were, ironically, in the Great Depression. So, the other thing that I have seen related to Colorado and obviously Nevada is Lake Mead. Um, Lake Mead and Lake Powell have both dropped to record all time lows. And that obviously jeopardizes the drinking water for tens of millions of Americans. So, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the two largest reserves in the United States, which provide water to 40 million Americans in Nevada, Arizona, and California, are at their lowest levels ever. Their lowest levels ever. The unprecedented consequences will have drastic results, and we must have water restrictions like we've never before seen. I actually saw Lake Mead on a YouTuber went out there just to check it out, and basically, literally, it looks like it's. They said they won't even be able. There's a boat launch, and it's basically one of the last ones into Lake Mead. They said that it won't even be usable in a week's time. In 1 week's time. This is how fast this is going. But food security, we've got the baby formula situation going on, but then we have the 10,000 cows that have apparently passed now because of heat. And so I'm going to go over to my 10,000 cow article. And I just want to talk to you guys. I mean, like, what are we just talking about? We're talking about, we went from flights, now we're in food. What is going on with food security? All of these things. I don't understand. So I don't know if you guys have seen the YouTube video of Kansas of the cows that have died, but it was reported more than 10,000 cows in. Okay, so this is, let me just get this, and they are blaming heat. So this is what is being blamed: heat stress. And this is also Kansas. If you just Google this on YouTube, the video is horrific. It seems to go on for miles and miles and miles. But basically, officials in Kansas City want us to believe that thousands of cows died in recent days due to heat and humidity, while some ranchers and media users believe something more sinister is responsible. You know, I have no idea what's responsible. What I will tell you is I don't ever remember seeing a YouTube video in my entire life where it seems like never-ending rows and rows and rows of cows that have died. This is a quote from Scarlett Higgins, who's the vice president of communications for the Kansas Livestock Association. And she says, "We do know from reports from our members that there has been a significant number of deaths in that area of the state." And according to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment spokesperson Matt Lara, the weather made it difficult for the cows to stay cool. You know, what strikes me in this video, and this is just my non-agricultural opinion, because I am not in any way any kind of ag specialist, but I will just say that it seems very odd that heat would kill every single last cow at the same time in a massive group. It just seems very weird. And not only that, but don't we not have heat every single year? Do we not have these degrees all the time? So here's a quote from Reuters. In a report, the deaths are centered in southwest Kansas, where several weather factors led to heat stress for cattle, a department spokesperson said. Temperatures were in the 80s and low 90s until a sudden spike to 100 degrees on June 11th, followed by 2 more days of triple-digit heat. according to the Weather Channel. And this is the report of just at least 2,000. Like I said, there's been a total of 10,000. They do not understand how the heat stress would go to this scale. Cattle generally are hardy animals and they're able to handle heat. And it says that the temperatures didn't drop at night, or at least they did not drop enough due to high humidity. And this worsens the cow because they could not recover in the nighttime as they normally would have. So it's hot, it's not humid, and the change is what is causing the losses, according to the spokesperson for the Kansas Livestock Association. So we now see that we have 10,000 cows. We have a failing wheat crop. We know that we are out of baby formula. So what else is going on with the food supply, and the food supply being a problem? And of course, we know that we've had all of these food plant fires going back for the last 2 years. There's a post that basically shows that there are 95 different events that have happened in the last 2 years. And so PolitiFact, which, does the fact checks on, I guess, the Facebook post, basically came back out. And on June the 7th, they posted that the 95 item list of food destroying incidents doesn't show that there's anything unusual going on. It just happens to be that we have 95 things that are going on, and there's no issue with that. So it's okay that we've had so many fires, that there's really no issue with how many fires there have been. That's no problem. So okay. Beef fires, chickens. So understand that the number of chickens and turkeys and even ducks that have been culled this year is astronomical. That is because we also have an avian flu that is now being reported as potentially moving over to other animal groups, which also is very unusual. So we have killed over 2 million. They call it culling. We've killed over 2 million turkeys and chickens already this year. In fact, let me just get how many turkeys, and this is again avian flu, bird flu, culling of the chickens in 2022. And you can see that, we have massively killed millions. Here's an update from Sentient Media. So let's just see. I believe it's and these pictures that come up are just even terrible to watch. But basically, in the past 3 months, we've had millions of birds die. And then, of course, we have culled. And this is tens of millions of birds all over the world. And I'm trying to see the amount in the United States. It says that we've had 39 million captive birds exposed to the avian flu. So it's, and there's an actual, if you go to sentientmedia.org, you'll see an actual counter ticker broken down by state. It looks like 39 million birds. So we have that also happening. Basically on Vox Media, as of May, it said that we have wiped out 36 million chickens and turkeys since the beginning of this avian flu outbreak. So we have that happening. So we have a beef crisis from heat. We have a formula crisis. We have a wheat crop failure across multiple states. We have the lowest water from literally ever recorded in two of the nation's biggest repositories of water. We have an avian flu that's killed millions of birds and infected 40 million birds in 36 states. We have 95 instances of unusual things happening in food processing facilities in the last 24 months. We have our administration saying there's going to be a food shortage. We know that there's going to be a food shortage because the fertilizer crisis alone and the Russia invasion in Ukraine situation. So we have a flight problem. We have a food problem. China is reporting that citizens are waiting hours now to get their cash out of banks. This happened in America in the 1930s. We called it a run on the banks. But it's coming out of China, and obviously China doesn't like this kind of information to come out, so it comes out through various channels. But we are seeing now that people are running on the banks in China because China had a lot of capital controls. Once they were all locked down, they were not able to get cash out of their banks. But we have reports, Financial Times, run on Chinese local banks spurs fear over health. Run on Chinese local banks spurs fear over health of regional lenders. So this is on the Financial Times, which is a UK publication, very highly reputable. And this is dated on June the 8th. So we are now starting to see that in Henan province, they have been fighting for 2 months to receive their frozen funds. But now we actually have lines of people having to wait to actually get their funds. They're protesting. They are not being allowed to get their money out. That's very unusual. We've been talking about the Chinese collapse of the economy for a long time. And so we have to understand what's going on and why is it being ignored? Why aren't you hearing? And I have got a report here from June the 12th out of the Asian markets reporting service. And it says there is a run on Chinese banks and it's being ignored by the world. So in an anatomy of an economic crisis, a bank run is the point of no return. Bank runs occur when people scramble to withdraw cash from banks in fear of collapse. In the worst case, banks' liquid cash reserves are exhausted. Not everyone gets their money and the bank defaults. And so I want to talk to you about exactly this for just a second. And this is the fractional reserve system. And this is why we have to have Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation for our accounts up to $250,000 per account, subject to contractual limits in each bank. And the reason that we have this, and again, we haven't had this happen since really the Great Depression, I would say maybe a little bit in 2008. But the reason that we're having this now is why. We know China is collapsing. We know China is telling their citizens that they're moving to a wartime from a peacetime modus operandi. But in Asia, bank runs have been rare. I think Japanese banks in 1927 had a run that led to the collapse of a dozen institutions in the country. And then, of course, Myanmar, or what we obviously know as Burma, in 2003, never has fully recovered. So really, what's going on is probably similar, according to the Asian markets reporting. This is similar to what happened in the Great Depression. It's very significant. The Chinese bank run in recent years, and I'll just read this little blurb to you. In recent years, it's become clear that Chinese people are losing faith in their financial institutions. There's anger over the lockdowns, especially recently with Shanghai. The collapse of China's Evergrande saw rare public demonstrations. Again, people faced the prospect of losing their life savings that was used as deposit for housing. Return our money, the Evergrande protesters chanted. It's a similar book in all of the branches in some of Chinese rural provinces right now. Multiple sources confirmed by Asian markets, confirmed deposits, and the following 6 banks have been frozen since mid-April. So it goes through the banks, and it talks now about how you are going to have to wait in line to get your money if you can get your money. So we have China collapsing. We have a run on their banks that's not being reported in the news over here. And just want to go through all these things with you to ask you, what do you think is going on? What's going on? What is going on in this world? Because you remember, all of this is happening right now while all of this is happening right now while our markets are teetering on recession. And recession is defined, technically speaking, as 2 GDP quarters contraction. We haven't had our second GDP quarter come out yet because obviously we're in the month of June. But our first quarter contracted 1.5%. Our GDP contracted 1.5% in the first quarter of this year. So if we get another contraction this second month, then we're technically in a recession. But if you want to go to a broader definition of recession and you want to look at, what other factors actually make up a recession, it's inflation, it's unemployment, it's supply chain disruptions, which we have all of these factors. We have every single factor that causes recession. We have. War doesn't help. So, war actually can actually make your economy boom because you you create so much, military equipment that it does, can cause a temporary economic boom. But we have food shortages. We have supply chain disruptions, both on the demand and the supply side because of China's COVID-0 policy and whatever else what's really going on over there, which we're not knowing. It's not really being reported. So we have all that happening. We have food shortages in this country. We have water shortages in this country. We have, an avian flu that's killing millions of birds and 10,000 cows dying from heat. We have the lowest water and the 2 largest reservoirs in our country in the history ever recorded. We have 10,000 flights canceled in the last 3 days. No one's talking about why and what's happening. We have Southwest pilots protesting their own employer saying we're severely understaffed. This has to stop. It's a difficult time in the world, you guys. It's a difficult time in this world. And I would love to be able to come on here and say everything's going to be fine and everything's going to be done in a month and everything's going to be back to normal. But these are systemic problems that are going to be with us for a while. And we have to keep that in mind. And we need to really think about what is going on here. And all of this in an election year, all this amidst new gun legislation being passed in the Senate, bipartisan legislation being passed in the Senate on gun control legislation in an election year. It's a lot to process. And, as much as everyone might want to disconnect all of these things and act like everything is disjointed and everything is going wrong in every single area of society all at the same time, but none of it's coordinated or consolidated or underlies something that's happening. Come on. We are not that dumb. America is still full of really smart people. They might be busy with their TikTok and their Facebook and their social media, but people are starting to say something is not right. What is going on? And I have my thoughts, but for today, I just wanted to lay out some facts. Until next time, you guys, have a great week.